Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. You're listening to PHLY Flyers. That's right, PHLY. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me, as always, today, Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter. It is Charlie O'Connor. Charlie, you saw the thumbnail.
You're really trolling.
You know
me with this,
what today is. Charlie, I just we're gonna get into it. I thought, like, okay, in the light of day, coming off the big win last night, people are excited. I'm excited. I'm going to calm down and be rational. No. In fact,
this is Philadelphia.
In fact, I believe the ceiling of this team is higher than I did last night. Because I had a friend text me last night, and he's like a Devils fan, but more at this point just kind of a general hockey fan. He's like, so what is the Flyers' ceiling? I was like, probably like real ceiling, like we've said all along. Let's say they get in and win a round. That's probably all anyone can reasonably expect from this team. And then as I'm just going through everything that we've seen in these first 31 games, I'm having trouble coming up with reasons why it can't be higher. Now, when you look at some of the best teams in the league on paper and you just go like, oh, look at Colorado Avalanche. They have Nathan McKinnon. He might not be their best player. You know, like that. It's hard to go, oh, well, yeah, obviously they're the same as them. But
they're not.
Reasonably, no. You cannot actually make that argument. But I will say, like a week ago, Mikko Rantanen is calling out his teammate's dad for talking shit on him in the media. Last night, you have
Devin
Taves calling out his teammates, being like, I don't think everyone's committed. And it's like, you know what I know about the Flyers? Everyone's committed. Like, everyone's all in. Not a guy out there not blocking shots, not doing everything they have to do. They might just have that right mix. Obviously, with the thumbnail image preceding today's show, the image we put out with the tweet, Stanley Cup. Do I think they're Cup contenders? It's hard for me with a straight face to say yes. But, like, I don't know, in 2007, like 07, 08, were they Cup contenders? No, they weren't anywhere near Pittsburgh, but they did play them to 6 games in the Final Four. Maybe their ceiling's a little higher than we have been willing to allow ourselves to think up to this point. Would you grant me that?
Yeah, I would grant you that. I would say that while everyone is rightfully excited about last night's game, and it was a very fun win, always fun to beat the Devils, especially in overtime, especially in the dramatic fashion that they did, they were not, and I said this on the postgame, they were not the better team in that game. The Flyers were outchanced dramatically. Sam Ersson played very well. They had a couple guys, Ryan Poehling, Joel Farabee, had really good games. Obviously, Owen Tippett came through in the clutch in overtime, but I watched that game. Like, there was a difference for me in terms of what I came away from, how I came away from feeling against the when they played the Avalanche. And I thought, wow, they went into Ball Arena. It's not called Pepsi Center. I was about to say Pepsi Center because I'm so used to that. It's called Ball Arena now. They went into Ball Arena. Tough environment, the altitude, really good team. And I thought they, on the whole, got the better of play in that game.
We're as good or better than the Colorado Avalanche. And like maybe it's more about when you play a team than who you play. Like, they beat Edmonton this year because Edmonton was really going through it, and now Edmonton is kind of back.
But my point is that I watched that game last night, and I saw a Flyers team that looks about what I expect the Flyers to look against the Devils. Look, it's hockey. You can win games where you get outplayed. That's the reason why they play the games. Because if it wasn't like that, then teams that are it would be the NBA, where you just assume that the top 6 teams are pretty much going to win every night. They, in my mind, played against the Devils the way that I expect this Flyers team to play against the Devils, where they were at times overwhelmed by the high-end talent. They worked really, really hard. They didn't give them things. It wasn't like 3 years ago when they were just like, it was literally just Goldberg like moving out of the way of the net and just being like, here, go ahead, score. That was what the Flyers were doing back in 2021, 2022. That's not them. They're going to make you work for it. The Devils worked for it. The Devils got some goals, but the Flyers ultimately came out on top. I watched that game and I said, this is not a cup contender. And maybe other people came away from that game with a different feeling. I came away from that game feeling like, yeah, that was a fun win. That's great. They're on this great point streak, 9 games now. They haven't lost a game in regulation in the month of December yet. But I came away from that game feeling like, yeah, they are still a cut below the Devils, even if they are ahead of them in the standings right now.
While I will agree for the most part there, I would like to say, and I think it's a great, like we talked about this last night, how funny would it be if the Devils' Achilles heel, while they're on this big upswing and they're building towards maybe being a perennial contender with all the great young talent they have, how funny would it be if their Achilles heel continues to be goaltending? And I look at what the Flyers have. Now, last night at Samuel Ersson, we should be operating under the assumption probably that a playoff run, especially this year, it would be backstopped by Carter Hart, who has been excellent. They appear to have that great equalizer in a goaltender that can win you games behind a defense that is stingy. Yes, they were outchanced. They were outshot in the game. They gave up like 26 shots. If you give up 26 shots in a playoff game, you should probably win it. And that's what this team has done all year. They're one of the better chance and shot suppressing teams in the league. That's John Tortorella. That is what he does. And I wanted to start today's show with this. It's Mailbag Wednesday, it's Wednesday.
Every day is Mailbag
Every day
Day.
is Mailbag Monday. It's from Zen Ahmed. He tweeted us. He said, "Charlie, when will you and Bill start discussing this Flyers team can compete for a cup this year? They're in almost every game they play. They may make the playoffs. Anything could happen once you get in, but this style is conducive to winning in the playoffs." And what I wanted to get into is they've beaten a bunch of good teams, whether good on paper or actually winning. They've beaten the Canucks, Oilers, Wild, Kings, Hurricanes, Golden Knights, Isles, Avs, Caps, Wings, Devils. They've beaten all of them. They've only had a handful of clunkers, maybe even not that many. And when they've lost to Vegas, Carolina, Dallas, Nashville, it's been in 1-goal games, often overtime games. They're there. They're playing with everybody. They're 18-10-3 on the season, points in 9 straight, 13-3-2 since the San Jose loss. They've won without Carter Hart. They've won without Travis Sanheim. They're showing now maybe a little bit more of an ability to erase deficits. They have a pair of 1-0 wins. They win in a variety of ways. When do we just have to kind of go, they're good?
I mean, I think we are acknowledging they're good.
They're good. I mean,
I am
better
not,
than good.
I am not acknowledging that they are a Stanley Cup contender because I do not believe they are a Stanley Cup contender. So the answer to Zen Ahmed's question is Bill is going to start discussing this. I am not, because here's my viewpoint. My viewpoint is that the Flyers the Flyers just don't have the same ceiling as the teams that have 2 or 3 true star players, because the teams that win the Stanley Cup are teams that are playing like the Flyers right now, whereas they're very together. They bought into a system. They have a good coach. They're doing all the little things. They're doing that, and they have 3 guys that can break open a game at any time. Like, maybe the Avalanche this year are not a cup contender because even though they have the talent, they don't have the intangible that's bringing them all together. But I guarantee you that once we hit the playoffs, there will be 3 or 4 other teams that are doing those things that the Flyers are doing, but also are significantly more talented than the Flyers. And to me, those are the cup contenders. Like, just because you might be able to argue that the Flyers as a team are better than some teams that have higher ceilings than the Flyers. But I do think that there are still going to be a few teams with higher ceilings than the Flyers who are playing like the Flyers, except with a lot more talent.
And that's, I feel you. And the last few cup contenders have been those awesome teams. Vegas, obviously, Colorado before that, the couple of Tampa teams. Right. Those are tremendous teams. Go a year before that. St. Louis Blues.
We're always going to talk about St. Louis.
I realize it's the outlier, and that's why you
such the outlier.
I realize that's the outlier, and that's why you call it that. But it's not as if there haven't been situations like in the last few years. It has been like, oh yeah, the best team. Like it's been much more NBA, where it's like, no, there's 3 teams that can win. There's 5 teams that can win, and that's really all who can win. That has not been the history of hockey, at least in our lifetime. Yes, in the 70s and 80s, it was like Flyers win 2 in a row. Montreal wins 4 in a row. Yeah. Islanders win 4 in a row. Oilers win 5 out of 7. Yeah. Like, it's been those teams. The 90s and 2000s were different. And what if it's more like that? Like, would I place a bet on the Flyers to win a Stanley? I mean, yeah, throw $10 on it and you get a huge return, and like, yeah, Christmas is free this year. Sure. Like that sort of bet. But like if it's, Bill, it's your mortgage or bet the Flyers, like, no, I'd rather live in a home. I'd rather have a roof above my head. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just saying they are looking a lot more like one of those teams that can have a fucking miracle run than I thought even a couple of days ago.
What I'll say is that, look, my viewpoint about the NHL playoffs, especially in this era, but really, you mentioned the 90s and the 2000s. For the most part,
the 90s, no, I was wrong.
For the most part, the teams that won in those eras too were also really good teams.
The 90s was a mistake to mention because there were like 4 teams that could actually win. My bad.
There was a little.
But
I'm going through here. There was a little run, I would say, right around the right after the lockout, yes, where there were, because you had. Okay, so let's go through the 2000s. You had the Devils, okay, dynasty-ish because they ruined hockey. The Colorado Avalanche, okay, great team, Sakic, Forsberg. The Detroit Red Wings, great team, obviously. The Devils again. Tampa Bay Lightning, okay, now we're getting maybe. They've got obviously the Tortorella connection.
Right, coach?
However, Vincent LeCavalier at the time,
Marty St. Louis,
and Brad Richards, like they had guys who were top 10, top 20 players. So let's say they're not. Then we get a couple. We have the Carolina Hurricanes in 2006, which are probably the best example of a team that just was a very good, cohesive whole that didn't have superstars. Then you have the Anaheim Ducks, where I would say they qualify as a star-level team because they had Pronger and Niedermeyer, 2 Hall of Fame defensemen. They had Solani at the end of his career, and they also had Corey Perry and Ryan Getzlaf on entry-level contracts. So then you have Red Wings, Penguins, Blackhawks, Bruins. Bruins are maybe the only one, but they were good for a decade. They're still good, apparently. Kings, Blackhawks, Penguins, Capitals, Blues. There's one. And then Tampa Bay, Colorado, Vegas. Basically, what we're looking at here in the last 20 or so years are 2 teams, the Blues and the Carolina Hurricanes, right after the lockout, who I think fit that mold. That said, I will say that the way I look at the NHL playoffs today is you can get to the Cup final being a team of pieces, a team where you overachieve, you go on a run. We've seen it a bunch over the last few years. Montreal, Dallas, last year with Florida, even though they were coming off of a President's Trophy year, so they were probably better than we expected. But you see Cinderella runs, and I think those are very possible. You don't see Cinderella teams actually win it. They eventually run into one of these teams that I'm talking about where they are playing like a Cinderella team, except they have 3 or 4 really, really good players too. That's what I think, even in the best case scenario for the Flyers, the absolute best case scenario, you're going to eventually run into one of those teams.
And that is all the time we have. No, the show is not actually over. But I do have to talk to you about one of our newest partners. It's our friends at Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills. I can see all of my subscriptions in one place, and if I see something I don't want, I can cancel it with just a tap. I never have to get on the phone with customer service, which, if you know me, oh my God, talking on the phone is my worst nightmare. And I lose it and they hang up on me, and then I'm stuck with a subscription for life, basically. They'll even get you a refund for the last couple of months of wasted money and negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is take a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped save its members an average of $720 a year, with over 5 5 million in canceled subscriptions. $5 million in canceled subscriptions. That is a ton. You're thinking, oh, well, how much could my subscriptions really be? You know, I have this streaming service for a couple of bucks. I have, you know, this maybe Charlie's old outlet for a few bucks, whatever it might be. Well, guess what? Charlie left. Why are you still paying him? You don't want that anymore. You want to be an all PHLY diehard. Like, obviously, you don't want that subscription, but you're locked in. You know, maybe you paid for it all up front. And you're like, how do you get out of it? You get out of it with Rocket Money. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/PHLY. That's rocketmoney.com/PHLY. rocketmoney.com/PHLY. Whenever I go to look in the camera, I actually just look at myself and then realize that's not the camera, and I have to like turn my head. I'm still not good like being a television, camera person, on-camera personality.
Slowly but surely.
We're definitely improving.
Yeah,
I would
think
say.
So.
All right, I'm gonna go out of order because I realized the way I ordered this outline is stupid. So right now, the Flyers might not have those one or two game breakers. Mm-hmm. I will mention, now, our boss Vince is, if you think I'm being a little irrational, every day I come in here, he's like, so you think they're going to buy at the deadline? And while I will say, in your interview with Danny Briere, he said, basically no.
Yeah, but he did leave the door open.
He did leave the door open for a Derek Grant, Nate Thompson. Listen, if we can trade a 7th for a dude we think can help us, they're not going to buy. I don't think that is on the table.
I do not think so either.
Could they look at one of the best players in college hockey, Cutter Gauthier? He's about to be one of the headliners of the American World Juniors team. I think he's 3rd in the NCAA in goals, top 10 in points. Is he going to step on the ice and beat Cale Makar? I doubt it. But,
highly unlikely.
But I'm looking at this guy every time I hear his name mentioned by any sort of person who pays attention to NCAA ice hockey. They say, he's a man. He could play in the NHL today.
Physically, yeah.
Could that be a little extra that could maybe bump up their ceiling a tad? Could he be someone, I'm not going to say make a difference. If their ceiling is they win a round, he makes them a team that could go to 7 in round 2, and then anything happens in game 7, and then boom, you're in the goddamn Final Four. Like, could he be something more than, he's a rookie, we'll get him in and see how it goes?
I don't know. I think, this is an interesting question because we don't know how his game is going to translate. It's extremely possible that he hits the NHL and it takes him 2 or 3 years to become the player he's ultimately going to become. Because this is a guy who, I've watched him play in college. While he does have the physical strength to hold up in the NHL, I do not think he's going to get injured by playing in the NHL right now. I do see elements of his game that are not NHL ready. He doesn't necessarily play with pace all the time. That's something he's going to have to learn. He does have a tendency to take a lot of shots from distance that, because he knows in college he can beat all those goalies from distance. I do not think he's going to be able to do that as often at the NHL level against better goalies. He might have to learn to be a little bit more deceptive with the shot. He may have to learn how to do what Owen Tippett is learning how to do, which is, power his way to the net more, do things like that, because the shot isn't going to carry him at the NHL level. Is it possible that he pops in and is fully formed? Yeah, it happens. Look at Shane Gostisbehere. No one expected Shane Gostisbehere to come in and be Shane Gostisbehere right off the jump, and he probably would have been able to do the same thing the year before had he not torn his ACL. Like, he was just a guy who, for whatever reason, could do all the things he did in college against NHL players too, especially before the injuries hit. Maybe Gauthier can do that. It's possible. You never know. I'm skeptical because I do not view Gauthier as having the ceiling as say, a Matvei Michkov, but hey, it's happened before. Guys pop in and suddenly you realize, holy shit, they can do exactly what they did in college or exactly what they did in juniors at the NHL level. I'm just not ready to expect that.
It's a totally, this is in no way an apples to apples comparison because I'm talking about the AHL. But I think back to Richards and Carter joining the Phantoms for their Calder Cup run during the lockout. And while, again, it's minor league hockey, it was the lockout. So there's plenty of NHL talent on that ice. Now, the Flyers, the Phantoms, had a considerable amount because they had a pretty good crop of dudes who were just around that age, and so they won the Calder Cup. But those dudes stepped on the ice and were the best players for the Phantoms, and they win the Calder Cup. I think Jeff Carter was the MVP of those playoffs, if I remember correctly.
But then if you remember, it took both of them 2 or 3 years to become really good at the NHL level. Part of the reason why the team had the worst record in hockey that one year is because both Richards and Carter were not ready to be really good players.
Carter could score right away, and then it came back.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'm just like, it's a possibility to me that he raises the ceiling for this team an inch.
Look,
and if that happens, look at what they're doing right now. I just can't.
Look, I guess I feel bad that I have to be the guy that's throwing cold water and everything, but like, I guess I'm going to be the guy who's throwing cold water and everything because I still don't think they're that good.
I know. It's hard for me to ignore the results right now. They're second in the Metro, 1 point up on the Isles. They're third in the East by points, fourth by points percentage. They're ninth in the whole league in both. They're a top 10 team in the NHL. It's hard for me to go a top 10 team in the NHL has no chance. I get it. I'm seeing all the things you are, Charlie. I'm not a moron. I understand the reality of the situation, but I'm also one of the questions that Zenimad asked is it looks like this style is conducive to winning in the playoffs. And listen, if you're Colorado, but when Colorado made their run, it was like, yeah, we have all this superstar talent. Also, we have a team of badasses.
Yeah.
Like Naz Kadri, he'll fuck you up. Like
as long as he's not getting suspended.
Yeah, well, he's not in Toronto anymore, so he doesn't get suspended anymore. Like Tampa, yeah, we make a joke out of like, oh, they got Pat Maroon and Luke Shen and won, but they did have to go from being a certain way, and they had the superstars. That's why they win.
Exactly.
But then they started playing a bit more of another way, and they went to 3 straight and won 2 of them.
Yeah.
They have that, at least defensively. I am a little, if there's one thing, and if there's one thing that does concern me about this being like sustainable, especially in a playoff like atmosphere, defensively, goaltending wise, I think they have it. At least they can compete and potentially win.
I agree.
A rush-based offense, I don't know if that's something you can win with in the playoffs. Like when we blocked a shot, and now Sean Walker is looking up, and he wants Travis Konechny taken off through the neutral zone. Well, someone just horse collars Travis Konechny, and that's completely legal because it's the playoffs, and the refs don't like to, decide games. It's like, well, you're letting them cheat. That's whatever. Like once it becomes playoff hockey, is what they do offensively something do you think that can carry over?
Well, I think the big thing that is probably going to be their Achilles heel, but it's probably going to be what buries them is the power play. Because as much as we joke and say, well, they let everything go in the playoffs, it's not that there are fewer power plays. Like the refs still call penalties.
The types of penalties.
It's just that everyone is taking more penalties and they call the same amount of power plays in the playoffs as they do in the regular season, when they probably should be calling more because everyone is doing more illegal shit because it's the playoffs. That's the difference. But having a power play that actively makes your team worse, like I'm happier to see them on the penalty kill than I am to see them on the power play, because I know not only are they not going to score on the power play, it's probably going to kill their momentum for the next 6 minutes after the power play because they're such a dysfunctional mess. Well, that is what, in my opinion, is going to ultimately bury this team. The power play is horrific.
After the power play, we got to put the 4th line out. And then they'll get buried in their own end for a shift or two, and then suddenly then they have to dig themselves out of a hole. When you would think like a power play would build your momentum, but I mean we've spent hours at this point discussing this absolutely non-existent. They need to come up with a different name for it. Like it's not a man advantage.
Pico is going to actually.
Pico is going to be
to pull their sponsorship of the power play.
Pico's like, we're not allowed to turn people's power off in the winter. Like we can't keep paying for this. It's nonsense. It's killing us. Anyway, that's that. Just since I brought up Cutter Gauthier, I am as I do many days because Jeff Marek is like the 3rd host of the show at this point. They're talking about Gauthier because he has said a couple of times now, I think everyone's biggest takeaway from this World Juniors is going to be like, oh, Gauthier's awesome. And that could very well be. But he brought up, like, we waved off in the summer this idea of some kind of rift with the organization. I think everyone's always a little nervous about college guys playing out
That's
the string.
exactly what it is. Everybody's terrified of college
And it's
guys.
like, every time I ask someone around in the league, not just in the Flyers organization, but just around the league about Gauthier maybe joining the Flyers at the end of this season, they go, we'll see. Do you get any sort of vibe, for lack of a better term, that maybe we were a little too dismissive of him? Like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to rookie camp or whatever it is.
Not really.
Okay.
To be honest, I mean, I could I see a scenario where Gauthier does not join the team after his season is done? Sure, I could see that. I cannot see a scenario where Cutter Gauthier spends 4 years in college just to not join the Philadelphia Flyers. I think that is the epitome of fans on Twitter getting scared about things before they ever actually happen.
We do that.
The idea of a top 10 prospect who is NHL ready right now, staying in college an extra 2 years and taking on the risk of getting injured and having his entire career come to a premature end before he even hits the NHL because he so desperately does not want to play for the Philadelphia Flyers, who, by the way, actually look good now. I just don't see it. I don't see a scenario where he is that opposed to joining the Philadelphia Flyers that he will spend 2 more years in college and put his entire career and future livelihood at risk to do so. I think that is people being scared for the sake of being scared. Could I see a scenario where maybe he doesn't sign this year? Yeah, it's possible. I don't think it's likely.
This summer will be.
I don't think it's likely, but sure, I guess anything can happen. And also, as I noted on a past show this week, we've done so many shows this week, I don't remember which one.
Who's to say?
But I said that the Frozen Four doesn't end until April 12th. Could I see a scenario where Gauthier wins the national championship, parties for a week, and then basically tells the Flyers, I don't really feel like playing in the playoffs. I'll just sign in the offseason.
Oh, my God.
I guess it's possible.
That would start to worry me about, and listen, I say this as if, like, I've said all along, I've always kind of related to Richards and Carter because I can't say I wouldn't have been the exact same way had I, had that sort of ability and opportunity. I would maybe now in my somewhat more mature 35-year-old self,
bit.
I'm no longer 17 forever. I'm like 23 forever. If he were to be like, nah, I'm good on joining a team in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I would be horrified about him.
Fair. That's fair.
Like, bro, you really got to want this.
Yeah, you got to want it.
This is real hard.
And that's
if you're not
fair.
all the way in, especially for this coach, that would worry me a bit.
I just cannot see a scenario where he takes the risk of staying in college because that's what what he would have to do. In order to leave a team
and not
that has
sign,
drafted you have to spend all 4 years in college, exhaust your eligibility, and then sign. I just do not see that happening. I really, really don't. And he straight up said at the beginning of the year, his plan is to sign at the end of the year. Do I think it's possible, and this might be what Jeff Marek is hearing, do I think it's possible that he's like not super thrilled about the idea? Like he's not
playing for John Tortorella.
He doesn't love. Yeah, I could totally see that. I mean, there was a big rumor in the summer, mostly driven by literally one dude on Twitter who was seemingly trying to pretend that he was Tony D'Angelo. There was a rumor that Cutter Gauthier is best friends with Kevin Hayes, and that's the reason why he doesn't want to be a Flyer. I don't think that was true to the degree that it was being presented. However, I could see a scenario where he looked at Kevin Hayes and was like, I don't know if I love this Torts guy.
I would I like Kevin Hayes a lot. I am sorry he's gone. I realize he doesn't fit and the team is better for it. I just really enjoyed Kevin Hayes.
Yeah, fun guy.
My kind of guy. When Kevin Hayes has been in the league a long time. He's like almost 30. Why would his best friend be like 17 years old? That would be weird.
It would be very weird.
That would be kind of weird.
Extremely weird.
All right, that's just something that I heard today, and I know.
And look, it's
things are going
Jeff
well.
Marek. He's a reputable source, and I'm sure he's hearing this from people that are just like, maybe Gauthier won't sign at the end of the year and rush into the Flyers organization. That's possible. I just don't think the next leap has to be he's not going to sign with the Flyers, because you have to look at the implications of how he would have to go about doing that, and I just don't think it's going to happen.
And that's I realize a lot of this is people, like you said, sometimes people just are scared for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And people
and they also
people
get
are
scared
afraid
about college players.
People are afraid to make the leap emotionally sometimes, so they're looking for everything that can go wrong 12 steps ahead, like like that scene in Good Will Hunting where he's like, well, let me tell you what can go wrong. And I just look at something that happened, I think it was today, when we talk about the Flyers' bad luck. Nolan Patrick retired out of hockey.
Has he? So here's the thing.
All right.
I think he's probably retired. However, the confirmation, I don't know if it's been confirmed by anyone reputable. It's basically he put up a resume that says he's retired.
Okay. Let's say he's not officially retired, because it doesn't, the league, I don't think he's filed retirement with the league or whatever. Nolan Patrick was the 2nd overall pick. It's the luckiest thing that's happened to the Flyers, since the arbitrator said, Lindros is yours. And we all know how that ended.
Yeah. Well, he was real good for the Flyers.
Yeah, he was real good for a short period of time.
Hall of Famer. That
bad luck of the last time we had a dude this highly touted, it didn't work. And there's a long history of shit going bad for this team. That's all. That's I think people, while maybe these fears specifically are unfounded, and I'm choosing to look at this season like new era of orange, fresh slate, it's real hard to just punch yourself in the head and try to give yourself enough brain damage to forget everything that's happened with this team in the last 15 years.
It's fair. Yeah. And the Nolan Patrick stuff, especially the last 5 or 6 years too, the Nolan Patrick stuff is sad. It's a bummer. My guess is that he will never play again. I would like to get confirmation from Nolan Patrick or from Nolan Patrick's agent before I say for certain, because it's possible that he is presenting himself in a resume that he is a retired NHL player because he's looking for a job, and anybody that hires him is like, well, are you just going to go back and play in the NHL?
Yeah.
I just wonder if this is not an official retirement, if this is more of a, well, no one's offered me a contract, so I guess I'm retired.
And the idea that he is not just not that great, but not on the team and not on any team.
Yeah. Yes.
It's people, I think, are a little scared, and there's some reason to hold negativity inside of you, because things often don't go this team's way.
Yeah,
we get Peter Forsberg. Yeah, his foot don't work. Oh, we have Chris Pronger. Team's a Stanley Cup contender. Yeah, he's never going to play again. Ryan Ellis, that's cool. It was, wasn't it? Those 6 games, I'll never forget him. Shit goes wrong for us.
I guess I just can't. And I've gotten into this debate with people for years. I just can't approach covering the Flyers with the
fatalism.
Well, everything's going to go wrong because it's the Flyers. I have to look at this as an objective journalist and say, hey, this could work, not, well, it's not going to work. Why is it not going to work? Not a reason.
It never works.
Just because it never works, because we're the Flyers. Okay, a fan can believe that, sure. But I cannot. I cannot accept that.
I believe this is part of what makes the dynamic of this show good, Charlie, is that you are nothing if not professional and intelligent and logical. And I'm going to tell you what I think at this minute. And by the end of this show, I might think something totally different. But right when I'm saying it, I believe it.
Yeah.
When the show ends, I might not think they're cup contenders.
But now, maybe.
Right now at 4:06 on Wednesday afternoon, I believe it. Before we go any further, I got to tell you about our pals at Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. If you're like me right now, you're feeling it, man, open up that Game Time app. Flyers are going away for a long time. They have one home game before the new year. It's tomorrow, Thursday night, down at the Wells Fargo Center. Flyers, Predators. Last time they played, went to overtime. It was a good game. You might want to go check it out. See this team up close and personal. You're like, I'm not sure if they're cup contenders or not. I'm not sure if I agree with Charlie or Bill. See for yourself. Go down there and use Game Time to do it. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more includes hockey. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. While we are on
the Nolan
rumors,
Patrick stuff? Oh, no, we're moving away from the Nolan Patrick
we'll
stuff.
go back to maybe that. I'm in a good mood. I don't know if I want to discuss the bad luck at length, and that's kind of where the Nolan Patrick thing was going to take me. It's also sad.
Yeah.
Like, we can talk all the shit in the world, and maybe he wasn't all in. Maybe he wasn't the nicest guy to whatever. He was the second overall pick, presumed first for like 18 months. If he was born like a couple of days early, I think his birthday was like September 15th. If he's born 2 weeks earlier, like he's a
top 3 pick in the previous
top 3
draft,
pick in a
probably,
generational draft.
Yeah.
Like, it's a fucking shame.
It is a shame.
Like,
it's
for the
I feel bad
Flyers, for him, for every, like, it sucks that this dude, like, he was going to be an NHL player and a damn good one. Even when, like, okay, he's not a superstar. He was good.
Yeah.
Like, he made plays when he was healthy.
I think he would have been a good NHL player.
He wasn't healthy and was a 40-point guy. Like, probably going to be all right.
Yeah.
And his career is essentially over.
Yeah.
That sucks. No matter what, anything, that sucks.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about something that's interesting, more on the perhaps unsubstantiated rumors from other podcasts on the Cam and Strix show today. It's Cam Jansen and NHL insider Andy Strickland. They talked about the possibility of John Tortorella, and this is something we've discussed in the past. I think this is what's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, I agree.
But the possibility of John Tortorella moving up into management, maybe sooner than expected, to make way for the return of the Chief, Craig Berube, jumping in as head coach. I think this is a possibility if it's real at all. Like next season, because if I'm a fired coach, I'm sitting on my ass and collecting that paycheck, buddy. And when my contract's up, I'll go looking for a job then. The possibility of Craig Berube jumping in to return as this team's head coach. Of course, the link here, Berube and Jonesy are real good
they're
pals.
buds, yeah.
They are good pals. We've all heard the jokes. Jonesy would start the fights. Craig Berube comes in over the top and knocks someone out. And Jonesy laughs his way to the bank. Now that he is in charge, Keith Jones, Craig Berube, fired by the St. Louis Blues because his general manager decided to give him a bad team. Do you think this is at all on the radar?
I don't want to rule it out entirely just because the connection is so obviously there. The Flyers, everyone in the Flyers world loves Craig Berube. Like he is just one of those people who is like so much in the club that when he got fired, the first thing I thought of was they're going to find a way to bring him in somehow. I don't know how, but they're going to find a way to get him in because Jonesy's best buddies with him. Everybody in the organization is best buddies with him. He's a Stanley Cup winning coach. They're going to find a way. John Tortorella is doing a great job as head coach.
John Tortorella right now is going to win the Jack Adams, in my mind at least.
I don't know why you would kick John Tortorella upstairs unless he wants to be kicked upstairs because he's doing such a good job coaching, getting the most out of this team. Now, you could argue that maybe they would be better served losing whatever if you're a tanker. But if you're talking about him doing his job, and his job is to get a team to play well and get a team to play good hockey, he is doing a fantastic job as head coach of this Flyers team. I do not know why. And I'm not saying Craig Berube is not a good coach. I do believe that Craig Berube is a good coach. I think he's a significantly better coach than he was the first go around here in Philly. I did not think he deserved to be fired from St. Louis. So I think he's a good coach. I think John Tortorella is a better coach. So I do not know why you would do that. Like, I don't think this isn't a situation where this is the best coach in history is on the market. So you have a conversation with John Tortorella and you say, hey, if you were planning to go upstairs 2 years from now, why don't you do it now so we can get Craig Berube? I do not think Craig Berube is that much of a holy shit, we need to get Craig Berube, where you basically kick John Tortorella upstairs. Now, if John Tortorella at the end of the season is like, Craig is the guy who I think is the right guy to lead this thing after I'm done. And if we wait on it, he's going to go get hired by somebody else. And then we're going to miss that chance. Maybe I'm ready to take a step back. Maybe. Like, I don't think it's something that I can dismiss out of hand. And Andy Strickland is based in St. Louis. I'm sure he's buddies with Craig Berube. I'm sure that he's hearing this from people around Craig Berube. So I do not want to dismiss the possibility out of hand. I do not think this shit is being made up. I just don't know why you would do it unless John Tortorella wants it to happen.
And I've always thought all along, like, we've said this countless times between Broad Street Hockey and here, like, John Tortorella, to me, when he was hired and talks about restoring Philadelphia Flyers to their rightful place amongst the premier teams in the NHL, the respect of the flying P, all that sort of stuff. There, I did it, like the blue note, the flying P. Yeah.
Play for the note.
To me, it was always like, okay, if that's going to happen, like John Tortorella, not a young man, if this team is going to reach what they were in the 70s, 80s, Lindros era, it's going to take a long time. It's not just a head coaching, I was hired to be fired, like so many of the coaches, pretty much all coaches are, and especially hockey, where it's like 2-3 years, you're out of here, even if you did a good job, i.e. Craig Berube.
Right.
Like, won a cup, he's out on his ass. It was the beginning of his story with the Flyers was head coach, and then he's going to become part of the club. I mean, if there was ever a guy who maybe wasn't born a Flyer, but yeah, he was.
He's a Flyer.
You do the DNA test, you're like, oh man, there's some Clarkie in there, huh? Like, it's him. He's going to ascend to that role. Maybe it's sooner than expected, but I definitely see this as a legitimate possibility. Is Berube gonna hang around, maybe like join the organization in some capacity, and then eventually he takes over
with the unspoken acknowledgement that, hey, when Torts goes upstairs, you got the job, buddy.
Yeah. And I just think back to you were in the press box at the time of Berube, right?
Yes.
I was young at the time.
Yeah.
I was there quite most games. I don't remember if it was the Orange update, Sons of Penn, I don't know, everything from 2012 to 16 kind of runs together in my mind. Being at his press conferences was terrifying. Like, I looked at that man and was scared. And I just think of the locker room, like, they seem to all pretty much be on board with Torts. And like, a lot of times, I always think of baseball, like, all right, you get rid of Terry Francona, you bring in Larry Bowa to kick everyone's ass, and then after that, all right, we need the nice guy in Charlie,
right.
And then, okay, well, we need someone to kick their ass. I just imagine the locker room like, oh my God, Torts is gone. All right, take a little breath here. Here comes Chief.
Yeah, but by the same token, that's something I do legitimately worry about, though, not in the way you're saying it, but on the flip side of that. I look at what happened to Columbus when Tortorella left. The whole reason why they went and they took the risk on Babcock is because they were basically like, we need another Torts. Who's the closest to Torts? I guess we're getting Babcock, because they felt like accountability fell off a cliff once the bad man was gone and he wasn't there to yell at everyone. And his assistant just didn't have that same presence, that same ability to shame players into playing better. So I do worry a little bit that when Tortorella, I love Bradshaw. I think Bradshaw is a really, really good assistant coach. Bradshaw strikes me as a really, really nice guy. I do wonder if, as much as I think Bradshaw deserves a head coaching shot, I worry a little bit that if John Tortorella got kicked upstairs and Bradshaw took over as head coach, would accountability suffer because Bradshaw just isn't the same hard ass. And this isn't a negative about Bradshaw. I just wonder, after Tortorella, do you need another kind of hard ass to make sure that everything Tortorella implemented doesn't slip the minute he's gone? I worry a little bit about that. And Berube, I think, would
actually be the correct replacement, maybe.
The thing with Berube is just, and I know.
Is this not the most Flyers shit ever?
I know that the vibes are good around the Flyers, so we're not hating on them about it. But it's like, Do you have to? Like, does it have to always be a fucking Flyer?
It's the exact thing that you and I were, me especially, because you don't rail, I rail. We're railing against. Like, I get that we want the culture, we want the family thing back. Everything was better when Ed Snyder was alive, all that. But, like, the former Flyer thing has been an issue amongst a lot of people. Now, listen, everyone likes Danny right now. Yeah. Obviously, everyone loves Jonesy. Just did an interview with Angelo Cataldi promoting his book, and he had some great Jonesy stories. Check that out right here on our YouTube page. If it's not up right now, it should be up like pretty soon. I don't know. But it was good.
It's coming.
We might be tacking the audio onto the end of the show. Once again, I don't know how things work here. But anyway, like everyone loves these guys right now, and there is a restoration going on of we're bringing the family aspect back, but sometimes that gives this organization the tunnel vision.
Yeah, the argument
they are too much one thing.
Exactly. The argument that I've made, and this was my thing about maybe not so much Jonesy, but definitely Briere, is this idea that Danny Briere might be a really good GM. So far, signs are good that he is a good GM. We will see how this plays out over the next few years. Chuck Fletcher got off to a good start too. We saw what happened with him. So we'll see. However, even if Danny Briere is legitimately a good GM, the idea that, like, you're shrinking the hiring pool if you're only hiring former Flyers. You might get lucky, and maybe one of those former Flyers truly was the best person for the job. But if your hiring pool, and you've said this, if your hiring pool is only people we know, you're cutting down on the likelihood that you are actually hiring the best person for the job because everyone else is hiring from the entire hockey world, and you are hiring from people who at one time wore the orange and black jersey.
Like, I was an advocate of, well, first it was Jim Montgomery. That was my guy. And he is former Flyer.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
He named the Legion of Doom.
Sure.
But, like, I was hoping for, like, let's get the next great genius out of Finland. Guess what's never, ever going to happen in Flyerland?
Get the next great genius out of Finland.
That is never going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, the hiring pool. And, listen, maybe they are right. Maybe they'll get the right guy, like you said. But it's just, like, it's a lot the way we talk about the rebuild. You're threading a needle.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah. Gauthier and Michkov better be the truth. Otherwise, what they are right now, which is nice, but, like, they're ninth in the NHL. It's not like they're first.
Yeah.
You better be, like, if you don't hit it, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where they are in that. So I think it would be interesting. It would definitely be entertaining. We could do endless shows on it. I just wonder how realistic it is. And I guess now, because it's totally different, there's probably no... Like, you know, Hextall's gone, that whole thing. There's probably no ill will. Like, Jonesy's his boy, like we said.
Yeah.
You think this would be something he's interested in? I mean, I guess you get the call. You take the job.
I think the Flyers are very much turning themselves, especially under Jonesy, because Jonesy is just beloved by everyone in the game, and the fact that the team is playing better, and the fact that they have Michkov coming. They are turning themselves back into an organization that I think it's more now. It might eventually become players, but right now I think it's people that are retired. It's people in management. It's becoming an organization I think that people want to join again. I don't think we're at the stage where players want to necessarily be a Flyer, because players are younger. They don't have that same connection with what the Flyers used to be. But I do think that there are a lot of people in the game who are watching the Flyers from afar who are like, I would like to be in that organization. That seems like an organization that is on the right track, is run by the right people. And they might be wrong, but there is a perception that, like, everybody wants to work for Keith Jones. Everybody loves Keith Jones. And Keith Jones is saying all the right things. The Flyers are doing all the right things. Now they're winning on the ice. I think Craig Berube, especially with his pre-existing connection with the Flyers, would absolutely want to be back part of this version of the Flyers. I absolutely think that. Now, whether he would be willing to sit around and wait for a couple years for John Tortorella to semi-retire, I don't know. He is a Stanley Cup winning coach. There's going to be a lot of teams that potentially want to hire a Stanley Cup winning coach, possibly as soon as in like a month or two. You never know.
No, like, Ottawa might come calling today, you know? And that would That'd be so funny for G. Here's a full circle moment.
Here we go.
Before we go any further, I got to tell you about FOCO, baby, because FOCO has the absolute best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. Whether you're looking for team apparel for the season ahead, they've got overalls, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, bags, anything you need for game day. Maybe you're in the market for some accessories, toys, or collectibles for your man cave, she shed, or podcast set. You've got to use FOCO for all your team gear needs. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in the description of the show. For all non-presale items, use promo code PHLY10 for 10% off. That's PHLY10 for 10% off at FOCO. And when you're talking about holiday wear, good team gear, oh, baby, do they have some good stuff. This sweater right here, it's a Philly thing, Kelly Green. This arrived from FOCO today.
Sure did.
I put it on immediately.
I watched Bill put it on before the show.
And it is, I'm going to tell you right now, it is comfortable. It's warm. Actually, with these lights, I'm starting to sweat a little bit. We only have a few minutes left in the show, thankfully. But this thing is going to be great. It will be a hit at your holiday parties. It's going to be a hit if you give it to somebody as a gift. I really like it. You know, I wear a ton of team apparel. I'm constantly trying out different brands and stuff. This is FOCO branded, and I'm a big fan. You will be too. So check it out at FOCO and get your 10% off with promo code PHLY10. All right, a few things left here to get to. Some of it is maybe a little bit of what we talked about last night, but I think I want to get into. Start with Walker and Seeler.
Okay.
Now, this is mostly a Sean Walker conversation, but those two, we've heard the rumor that at least one team wants them as a pair, perhaps around the deadline.
Makes sense.
But they are both expiring defensemen, so they're guys who might be moved. With where this team is right now, again, I don't think they're going to buy. That's not happening. But you brought up this idea last night that's been kind of running around in my head. Could they potentially justify not trading one or both of them and say, these are our version of rentals? Like these guys, because we're still in the playoff hunt, we're maybe still top 3 in the division, or we're right on the borderline of a wild card, whatever it might be. We want to give the guys in the room, we've heard that like they've earned it, so we're going to give them the opportunity. These guys, Walker and Seeler, are basically deadline additions because we did not move them despite them being on expiring deals. Could you see them justifying that?
Right now, no. Right now, no, I do not think that is their plan. I think they are absolutely looking at Sean Walker as someone where it's either we re-sign him or we trade him. And I think they're absolutely looking at Nick Seeler as someone who they are planning to trade. Now, if they continue to win, if they are solidly in a playoff spot, maybe. I mean, hell, if they're solidly in a playoff spot, if we're talking about if it's the end of January or they're on pace for 105 points or something, they might think about re-signing Seeler. They might be like, hey, we got a wagon here. What the hell? I don't think that would be smart, but you never know. Things can change. Like literally, Bill, you opened the show saying Stanley Cup 2 weeks ago. If I told you that 2 weeks in the future you would be opening a show saying Stanley Cup, you would be like, you're insane.
I got to quit drinking.
You're actually insane. So things can change. I gather that things can change in people's opinions of the team on Twitter. We had that opening question from Zen Ahmed about why not? So things can change. Right now, I would say that no, I do not think the Flyers will look at Walker and Seeler as own rentals at this point, based on the conversation I had with Danny Briere on the road trip, based on what I've heard from people around the organization. I do not think that they would look at it that way right now. If in early February they are just absolutely killing it, maybe that changes. Right now, I do not think that is their plan.
I keep looking at this team in terms of like, I'm looking for benchmarks to show how and why they're different. And like we've, in general terms, like 1 goal against does not become 4. Someone makes a mistake and then 9 other people make mistakes like that. They've cut that out. There's just certain things I'm seeing that are considerably different. When we talk about what this team could be in the near future, you said end of January. I am looking at these next couple of weeks, and I meant to actually go back and look at previous Disney on Ice trips and see how they've fared and like the history of this. But in my head, this has often been a big stumbling point for this team. They go out west over the holidays, things go to shit, and maybe they never get back on track.
You know what the funny thing is? Last year, as bad as last year was, that was the beginning of trip they did.
That was the beginning of, oh shit, they're gonna make the playoffs. And then like after that, they had like a 10-3 run or something that like centered around the Disneyland Ice Strip. But I wanted to go back and like look at some of them. But guess what? We have a show every day. I can do this tomorrow. But are you? You said end of January. I'm kind of looking at like between now and the first week of the new year as maybe a benchmark of, things are different. Like we have to start planning for they're going to be in the playoff run. Like this to me is a good point to look at them and go, yeah, things really are different. Like I know I started the show Stanley Cup, but if they get through this one on the same pace that they're on right now, I think it becomes more and more realistic that it's not going to all fall apart. Because that is something, again, Jeff Marek is the unofficial third host. He's like, I just keep looking at them and going, when's it going to fall apart? And I think a lot of us in the back of our minds are like, they can't keep this up. Yeah. They're just not that good. Yeah. If it does not fall apart and, in fact, keeps ascending through January 3rd or whenever their last game of the trip is, the 2nd, to me, that's a big flashing neon sign. Yo, take them seriously for real.
I think the big thing here with regards to when I talk about how things can change, in a month's time, we could be looking at this and we could be having an entirely different discussion because our perception of the quality of the team changed. To me, the big thing that continued strong play hints at, and this is why I cannot get on board with the this is terrible that they're winning because they're never going to get the talent they need. If they keep winning, especially if they keep winning in this way, that implies that the guys they have here are actually really talented. Yeah. And that changes things because then suddenly it's like, well, how are we going to get the 5 stars we need to be a great team? Well,
TK's one of them.
If Sean Couturier is a Selke winner, he's one of them. If Travis Konechny is a 45 goal scorer, he's one of them. If Joel Farabee is Justin Williams,
the best 5-on-5 scorer in hockey,
then he's one of them. And then you have some of those guys already here, and then you pop a Mitchkov and a Gauthier on top of them, and then suddenly you do have a team with 4 or 5 impact guys because they have 2 or 3 impact guys that are already here. Now, I'm not ready to say that about those guys yet, because it's still December. They still need to do this for longer, especially guys like Farabee and even somebody like Konechny, who has improved his 5-on-5 results dramatically. I think in large part that's because he's playing alongside Sean Couturier. That helps. But he's improved his 5-on-5 results dramatically. He looks very good this year. He looks like he could be potentially a 40-plus, 45-plus goal scorer. If that is who he is in 2 months, I need to reassess my view of how talented those guys are. And then we as a group, I actually think I'm going to be writing an article on this later this week, but we as a group need to reassess how many more stars they actually need, because perhaps they have guys on this team who are of that level already.
All right. I see. Even the skeptic, he's starting to get there, folks. We're going to break him down. I'm going to do this. I don't want to actually spring this question from Stackatoshi on you because it's like, you don't have Cap Friendly open. So we may be able to do that later this week. Just the Ryan Poehling thing real fast to wrap up.
That we talked about post-game.
That we talked about a little post-game.
Yeah.
What do you think? Well, do you already think he is maybe carving out, at least for now, a permanent role in the top 9? And if you don't think this is going to extend beyond a couple more games or whatever, what do you think he has to do to stay?
I do not think he's carving out a permanent role in the top 9 because, as I said on last night's postgame show, I think that once Scott Laughton starts playing better, he will take that spot again. I think this is a temporary thing because of how poor Scott Laughton has been over the last few weeks. What I do think Ryan Poehling is doing, and I absolutely believe this, I think he is carving out a permanent role on this team. He's only on a 1-year contract. Now, granted, they still have restricted free agent
he's an
rights
RFA,
of him,
yeah,
so it's not like he's a pending UFA. But he's a guy who the Flyers are trying to decide if they want him to be part of this. I think he is very much convincing the Flyers that they want him to be part of this. Now, I do not want them to sign him to like a cap hit of $3 million.
No.
But I don't think he's going to need. I don't think he's going to need that. I think you could sign him to a 2-3 year deal and have him be he's a guy who they look at as he's young enough. He's a bottom sixer for us for the next few years. I think that he is very much convincing Danny Briere, Keith Jones, John Tortorella that Ryan Poehling needs to be part of this. And that's something that I wasn't sure he was going to be able to do going into the season.
Coming in, I thought he was... it's somewhat similar. This is why I called him a waiver claim last night, because he's Kiefer Bellows in my head.
Gotcha.
Like, this was just kind of a roll the dice and let's see kind of a pickup.
And it was. It's exactly the kind of moves I want the Flyers
He was
making.
a non-tendered, dude. They just picked up off the scrap heap after a year, and not even. They played 30 games or something in Pittsburgh. It was worth a shot, and it looks like it's paying off. Just one last now. You said when Laughton gets it back together, you think he'll once again supplant Poehling. Do you expect him to? Do you expect him to get it back together? Or is what Scott Laughton is right now, is he declining? Is he
turning into a pumpkin?
I wanted to say turn into a pumpkin, but that's not fair, because it's not as if he had one good year.
Yeah.
This is 4 or 5 sustained years of good hockey.
Yeah, he's a good player. I think Scott Laughton will bounce back. Okay. I am enough of a believer in his talent level to think that he has not just fallen off the cliff at age 29 going on 30. Okay. I think he has quite a few more solid years left in him.
Dope.
I could be wrong, but I think this is just a bad run of play. I do not think this is Scott Laughton is a bad hockey player now.
Whether you want Scott Laughton to stay as part of the culture or you want to trade Scott Laughton, the fact that Charlie believes he's going to bounce back is good. Because it's easier to trade a good player, and it's a lot more justifiable to keep around a good player than a dude who's just he wears an A, so he's got to be out there.
Right.
All right. And that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers this week. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Not this week, just today. We're going to be back with postgame tomorrow. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Follow us right here on YouTube. Make sure you have those alerts set. Never miss a live show. Follow the podcast, PHLY Flyers. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers. My name is Bill Matz for Charlie O'Connor. Have a great week, Philly.